Happy Monday. Why don't we go ahead and get started? Some people don't think it's a happy Monday today. I think it's a happy Monday. All right.
That's the only way we get to Tuesday.
Exactly. All right, we are on to the agenda. So we've got 3 items on. We've got a bond refunding resolution, and then the budget development update, and then a series of items that we're going to take up in closed session. And I believe we are going to conduct some business after the closed session as well, but I'll announce that again when we get to that item. So why don't we go ahead and get started on the bond refunding resolution. So Wyatt and Richard?
I'll just do a quick introduction, and Richard will handle it. But this is a refunding of the Mary Ellen Henderson bond issuance that was made in 2004. There would be savings from this refunding, and they would be relevant to our budget briefing that would be immediately following this item. I'll ask Richard to go through the details, but just one note as to, we did a bond refunding just 2 months ago, and that was really for the TJ expansion project, the city share with the Q-Scabs, and the City Hall project. And so the question is, why isn't this part of that? And the answer, I think, is probably 2. One, we had a timeline for the TJ expansion. We wanted to hit those timelines. But 2, to be bank qualified, a bond issuance has to be under $10 million. And so, and all of your bond issuances in one calendar year need to be under $10 million to be to qualify as a bank qualified issuance. And you get a lower rate for that. And that's another reason why we kicked this out as a separate action. But Davenport has brought this as an option for us, and we want to take it to council.
Good evening, council. As the manager said, there was a twofold reason for doing it. Actually, there was 3. Initially, we looked at this when we were doing the other refundings, and it was not feasible at that time. Since then, because of the age of the bonds, we were able to do the refinancing. The callable portion is $14,615,000, and by exercising that call provision, we are refunding this. We're saving a little over $1 million over the remaining life of the bond, which is 12 years. We have asked our advisors to provide us with the amortization schedule that was front-loaded, and that front-loaded portion would mean that we'd have about $298,000 or $268,000 of savings in 2013, which we would use to offset some of our pay-go operations that are projected in the 2013 budget. The other reason for bringing this forward now is since we just went through the bank-qualified issuance, we only are doing sort of a touch base conference call with the rating agencies, and we don't have to go through that process all over again since they just issued bonds. They just did a POS. So the only thing we're going to be doing is updating the information with whatever information has occurred since then, and we're ready to go. I'll be happy to answer any questions.
Council? Richard, just so I'm clear, on looking at the attachment 1, by front-loading it, you mean the savings are realized the first year?
Yes, we've moved up the savings. Instead of spreading the savings equally over the 12 years, we front-loaded it and moved up the savings so that we could have a substantial amount of money to utilize one time. So your pay-go for 13 conceivably would save approximately $300,000 for 13. Okay. And that allows you to push your pay-go reserves back a year and use them next year as opposed to this year.
Okay. And the plan would be, I mean, understanding that money is fungible, the plan would be to use the approximately $300,000 savings in 2013 for other capital projects.
Yes.
Not operating.
Not operating. This is strictly for pay-go.
Does the Budget and Finance Committee have anything on this? I don't know if you've had a chance to look at it prior.
Yep. We are going to schedule a formal meeting. Unfortunately, I was unable to post the notice in time so that we could meet today. But we have touch base with each of the members to have a brief conversation of what we were presenting tonight. But we'll have a full version next Monday.
Okay. Dave, any questions? Any downside to this, Richard or Wyatt?
No.
Okay. Okay, great.
Great.
So let's put it on the calendar. Is there a particular advertising requirement on this that we should be aware of, or is
No.
there- Okay, so it can go Monday.
That's the beauty of this.
Okay, great. Just so, let's just make sure that notices go out as we would normally do that.
Right.
And is there anything, as far as this goes, that affects the schools where they should get notice of it?
No, however, we are meeting with the school board to give them a budget briefing, so this matter will come up. I've been asked at almost every school board meeting I've attended about refunding opportunities, so I'll be happy to tell them
Yeah,
about this
just so
one.
they have a heads up and they're not reading it in the local papers you know,
Yes.
after we take action. Okay, great, thank you. Ira?
If they're asking you on a regular basis, is there an expectation as to where those proceeds would go other than PAYGO?
I have no idea other than my response to the question is that we explore all opportunities for refundings where possible.
I'm thinking about the savings, the proceeds of the savings.
I do not discuss that with them, and they haven't mentioned
But
it.
they do ask you continually about the refund.
They do ask me
As an
about,
intellectual exercise.
I have no idea.
Okay, thank you very much.
All right, let's put it on for Monday. Thanks. And I think it's everybody's expectation that the money is going to go to PAYGO and other
You may wanna
capital.
make that
Intellectual
exercise.
say.
Yeah. And I think council's been pretty clear on that via the guidance that we put out. All right. We are on to the FY13 budget development update.
Well, Richard and I will gang up on this presentation. I'll say a few things sort of process-wise where we are, and Richard will go through the numbers. His will be much more interesting than mine. But I did want to just note, of course, I will present my budget recommendations to the council on March 12th. The Planning Commission right now is reviewing the CIP, and Cindy is working with the Planning Commission as we speak, and they're slated to adopt their CIP recommendations, I believe, on February 22nd, unless they need a little bit more time, but that's when that's planned. And the school board is on our budget calendar to adopt their budget request to the City Council and vote on that on February 28th. Internally, what we've been doing, I've just received all the departmental budget requests, and we're reviewing those right now. My budget guidance to all department heads was as follows, was to build a departmental budget that exclusive of personnel costs, pension, and health care, and exclusive of interjurisdictional contracts. Hold your budgets at zero, at no growth in your budgets. And the strategy behind that was by having across the board no growth, that at the end of the process we might have some funds available to address service cuts that would come about with a 0% growth because of natural inflation and contracts and things like that that need to be met. And we try to apply some prioritized funds for that. And then secondly, if there are funds in addition, that we could in a strategic way across the organization to target funds to resource things that are on the City Council's work plan and our strategic initiatives that would benefit, that would reflect citywide priorities. And so we're in the midst of that process right now, and then that will be folded into my recommendations to you and will be encapsulated in the budget narratives for every department. So the question that we're working through, and I think what you'll be interested in, is will there be any money at all to work with and to fund those types of priorities? The story of this year's budget is real extraordinary pressure on the cost side, whether it's capital, whether it is employee compensation, and whether it is pensions on the school side. All those issues are really the main thing that we're wrestling with the budget this year. The revenue picture is better than it has been in the past several years, and so that is good news. But the cost pressure is well in excess of what that economic growth that is generating on the revenue side. So that's sort of an overview of process and kind of where we are, and Richard will provide you an update with the way he sees things in terms of revenue forecasts and how we're doing in managing those expenditures things.
Well, as the manager said, and as I've reported to council, we have been monitoring our revenue. We finally received what we believe. Thank you. We have finally received the final assessed figures. The assessed values grew at 4% overall. There were individual breakdowns, but I don't have them available now. But we expect that our assessed value will grow 4%. Our revenues, our other revenues, the ones that we've been monitoring and reporting to council on, sales tax, meals tax, property taxes or personal property have grown quite well. We are running a revenue growth of about 7.4% for our projected 13 over what we had done in FY12, or what we had forecast in FY12. What we do have, however, are costs that exceed this revenue growth by about $224,000. That has come down from the numbers that we've given you previously. Okay, and again, part of it was due to having departments bring their budgets in flat other than personnel and IJs. On the IJ front, this 224 includes fully funding the IJs, but as we will discuss in more depth, we are currently looking at where we are, and we're looking at those services and negotiating a figure that we believe we will be able to phase in over a couple of years. That will produce some savings for us, which will leave us with approximately a $300,000 availability of funds for those priority projects. Keep in mind that with the resolution that we presented to you about the refunding, that'll be an additional $300,000, so we'll have a pool of $600,000. Before everybody jumps up and down and claps, we have $2 million in requests from departments in excess of what they submitted with their budgets. They kept their budgets flat, but in keeping budgets flat, there were services and things that they are foregoing to accomplish that zero. We've accumulated that. We are hopeful that we will be able to use the surplus to address some of those issues. So with that, if there are any questions, I'll be happy to answer them. Keep in mind, we also have to plan for some other events that may come up in the future.
Okay, thanks. Why don't we just go down the line? I'm sure there's going to be a lot of questions. And Ira, and then Johanna, and then Dave, and then Lawrence.
Thank you. Just something that I'm thinking about this afternoon. Included in the cost is the estimate of $1 million additional pension costs, correct?
Included in the school request, transfer request, that is part of the reasons that they gave for their transfer request, not solely $1 million in
I'm just
pension costs.
establishing it for the next question.
Yes.
Just want to confirm for everybody. The General Assembly may not decide to increase the contribution of employers by that amount, for example. The last time something like this happened, there was some discussion about the difference that was, or what was returned. Since this is, put it this way very flatly, it would be useful if we make clear, should the General Assembly decide to request less, and therefore there is, instead of $1 million additional, let's say 800,000 instead of $1 million, that 200,000 comes back to the city. So there, we'd avoid a last-minute negotiation of where who was the recipient of that difference in cost.
In other words, if the General Assembly changes the governor's proposal, because the superintendent's budget recommendations are based on the governor's proposal on pensions. And, you know, one thing that the council has put into its budget guidance is to come up with a plan to meet future VRS costs. The governor's proposal, based on the information we have, gets about halfway there. It's a big jump up, and people are expressing alarm about it across the state, but in fact, based on what the trustees of the VRS say, it's not getting as far as the employer's contribution should be. So if the General Assembly should lower the number, I think one policy question, would be whether we don't go ahead and set aside those funds as a lockbox for pretty easily anticipated future increases in VRS. And that I think that was the gist and the thrust of what the council's budget guidance was to me back in November. But if my read on that is not in line, then we ought to continue the discussion.
Yeah, Ira?
Mm-hmm. No, but I mean, that's a reasonable idea. However, if I recall, there was a request that we meet to discuss creating a plan.
Yeah.
And that was not accepted by the school board. So has there been a change in view? I mean, that would make sense, but last information I had was that they were not interested in doing that.
I think the conversation could continue, but I don't think well, the school board has not agreed to anything, I think, at this point, and it's early days.
Okay, but it may be useful as we proceed that the council have a view on how we would like to see it. Right.
Well, if I may, what the school board is doing right now is they're going through their budget and they're having hearings. I don't know that what we've gotten is really their final numbers yet. Mm-hmm. I don't know whether they'll go up or down. I'm sure that they are also waiting to see what happens in Richmond concerning a number of items that has forced them to increase their budget. Okay, not the transfer, but the increase of their budget. So as that becomes clearer, we'll have room to have those conversations about reductions.
Yep.
Johanna?
Richard, I'm very glad that you brought up the issue of the sort of shadow budget, or the additional $2 million that staff has requested, because this is really sort of a philosophical argument. It can easily turn into a financial one. And my concern about a zero growth budget, as much as I am a fiscal conservative and the first to point out, that we need to keep things lean and mean, is that there are inefficiencies that end up costing the city by being lean and mean in this particular respect, right? By zero budget growth. There are projects that are put off. There are a software that doesn't get updated. Therefore, things take longer to do than they would. I mean, you see where I'm going with this. So I guess one of my questions in terms, Wyatt, of your budget guidance to staff, do you think that staff understands that in your zero-based budget guidance, they should keep sort of the long-term vision in front of them? In other words, that the decisions they make aren't simply, this year we won't buy any more rulers, but that the decisions they make about the budget, zero-based to conform with your guidance, doesn't in fact end up in 2 years putting the city at greater financial risk. I mean, I guess I just don't know how much conversation you have with your senior staff so that they, you know, they feel comfortable coming to you and saying, while I understand the need for this, in fact, if we don't do this X in 2 years, we are seriously going to be looking at, you know, Y.
Well, I think our department heads have been very, they have every single one of them has cut their budgets a lot over the past 4 years. And so there is a great deal of strain, and you can get to a point where, you know, cutting more is, you're just not getting the job done. And the exercise is meant to be one just so that with that sort of baseline discipline, that we can get all the department directors together, look at the problems that need to be addressed, and then dedicate revenues towards trying to address those issues. And my goal was to have more resources available for that type of strategic process than less. And so that was the theory behind the zero. We could have said cut it by 5% and then we'll redeploy. You know, there could have been a gradation anywhere within reason. But I chose 0% as sort of acknowledging that everyone's, you know, the place you cut back in 2006 where we were cutting was in these non-operating costs of the all those types of maintenance type of things and office supplies and all that sort of stuff. Those all got cut early on in our cutting process. So your point's well taken, but what I tried to set up was a strategic process.
Dave? Lauren?
With the revenue increases within the personal property tax, have we been really aggressive of making sure that we're getting everyone who has registered their cars and all that stuff? Because I know that's, to me, as being a person that kind of within that side, making sure that everyone's contributing their fair part to the overall city's budget.
We are monitoring it. The bills went out in October? September. So, you know, we're looking at what's coming in. Part of what came in has forced us to look at what our projections are, and they increased. So at this point, I would say that collections are coming in fairly good. We are working with both the Commissioner of Revenue and the Treasurer to make sure that we enhance our collection efforts so that we get everything that we need to.
Richard, thanks for the presentation. And I don't want to get too afield on this, are any contingencies that we may have for legal fees, et cetera, built into the numbers you gave us?
No, not at this time.
John, I want to look at you for a second. Do we want to discuss those on the record, or is that best left for closed session?
Why don't we discuss that in closed session?
Okay. I'm just going to ask that those numbers also be discussed with the school board, and how we would manage that. Because I think that there might be a story to be told there that there are other contingencies that we need to address. So, but it sounds like we're best left taking some of the specifics up in closed session. So,
Yes.
Why don't we do that? So, sounds like things are at least moving or trending in the positive direction, but lots of cautions and lots of other possible contingencies that are out there.
Well, again, we are, we're in the review process now. We have a sense of what the accumulated available funds will be. The next item that we will be looking at is sitting down with all the departments and prioritizing. What I've done is I've prepared one spreadsheet with everybody's attachments incorporated in it, and that's how we got to the $2 million. As a group, we'll try to prioritize, and then we will look at how we're going to fund it. We are also mindful, again, of upcoming events that may not be included in the budget at this time that may have to be, and we need to present to council strategies and alternatives for dealing with them.
But it sounds like from what Wyatt was talking about and how he structured it, I think it makes some sense based on the numbers that we know, and keeping the focus on some of the capital needs and deploying where we can. So,
Just to build on something that you mentioned, if I'm not mistaken, other than PAYGO, there's nothing specifically in the numbers you're looking at that deals with the stormwater issue, correct? Other than PAYGO.
Yeah, that's the projects themselves are in the CIP, so that's being discussed right now upstairs with the Planning Commission. But what the engineering has come forward with is, in order to manage these projects, we have some resource issues that are on our list of things that if we're going to accomplish goals, we need to fund. And so in terms of the operating budget, those are part of the mix of that $2 million.
and we did put some money aside. Well, I shouldn't say money, but the CIP did contain, and I can't recall the exact numbers, but we did
$1.2 million for 13.
for 13.
Yes.
Okay. So, and that's built into the numbers now as far as the debt service?
Yes, it is.
Okay. So there is some stormwater. I just think we need to be very careful with what we're talking about. We don't have a full set solution for all of the project for stormwater, but we are making some headway, as limited as it may be given our financial situation. But it doesn't resolve some of the larger items that we talked about. And that much is clear, and that we need to do more on that front. But there is some money aside, and I think we talked at some length about that to make sure that there was some money last year for stormwater management. So. Okay. Anything else on this? Just a couple process points. Based on a couple requests that I received from council members to try to do at least one joint session with the school board. I did ask the city manager to try to schedule that, and I believe that he had some communications with the superintendent, and I had some communications as well with the school board chair. So I've made a request that we try to schedule a joint work session before February 28th, and they're taking a look at that to see if it works with their schedule and based on what they know is going to happen legislatively at Richmond. So that's where things are at. I don't have anything definitive to tell council other than that I've made that request upon the request of several council members. So we'll see where that goes, and I believe the city manager is also in the process of trying to schedule a liaison meeting between council and the school board as well. So yeah, that's in process as well. So those are the two process issues.
And we will, we're going to, both Richard and I will be at the school board meeting tomorrow night, and we will raise that as something to be scheduled.
Okay. Are you all planning on going, and John, I don't think necessarily needs to be there, but are you also planning on going into closed session to provide them some updates on the other liabilities? Like
That was
water?
the request, and I didn't check their agenda to make sure they pre-advertised for that, but I'll check that. But that's the plan.
I think it's going to be important for them to have an understanding of what's going on with that as well. So if it doesn't happen tomorrow, I think at a future date, if it didn't get properly advertised. Okay. Anything else? Does that sound right, council?
Mhm.
Everybody's good with having the school
yeah.
board know what's going on
Oh,
as
yeah.
far as the liabilities?
Oh, yeah.
All right, very good. Okay, we are on to
Closed session.
the closed session. And before I take the motion, just as I've noted before and as a prudential matter, with regards to the post office parking lot and the matters that are going to be discussed about property the city owns. I own property at 243 Gundry Drive, and I'm also a member of the Winter Hill Community Associations, and I can consider the matters fairly objectively in the public interest. And I apologize, but this is going to be a long closed session notice. So pursuant to 2.2-3711A3 of the Virginia Code, for discussion or consultation of acquisition of real property for public purpose or for the disposition of publicly held real property where discussion in an open meeting would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. And 2, Section 2.2-3711A7, consultation with legal counsel and briefing by staff members or consultants pertaining to actual or probable litigation where such consultation or briefing in open session would adversely affect the negotiating or litigating posture of the public body, in consultation with the legal counsel employed or retained by the public body regarding specific legal matters requiring the provision of legal advice by such counsel. And 3, 2.2-3711A29, discussion of the award of public contracts involving the expenditure of public funds, including interviews of bidders or offerers, and the discussion of the terms and scope of such contracts, where discussion in an open session would adversely affect the bargaining position or negotiating strategy of the public body. The following items: post office lot, water, 3 IJ agreements, and Mayor Baruch, yes. Vice Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Councilmember Berry.
Yes.
Councilmember Gardner's absent. Councilmember Kalin.
Yes.
Councilmember Pepe's absent. Councilmember Webb.
Yes.
Thank you. Okay, we are going to be conducting one other business matter when we come out of closed session, and we are going out at 8:06. Oh, and I'm sorry, we need to go through this again. I didn't get the motion. Upon a motion made by Councilmember Webb and Barry. Sorry, let's just do this again so we've got it right. I apologize, Council. Mayor Baruch, yes. Vice Mayor Snyder.
Yes.
Barry.
I know we do. We do. Sorry,
Barry.
Bess. Nicely done. Lon.
Kalen
Yes. You got just
and
I
Webb.
just
got tagged.
I got tagged.
Okay, sorry about that.
Could we go through that again, please?
No. No.